Hey folks, welcome back. Everyone says the classic term, they want to be more consistent. There's one thing that really good players do that most players don't do that well. And if you want to become a more consistent ball striker, we're going to talk about a number today or a concept that I need you to become more consistent at. And it is about your low point. I'm going to explain to you what low point is, the common fault I see in most players, what we see the best players in the world do well, which allows them to control their low point, and then maybe a couple ideas on how you can train it to help you hit better golf shots. So if you're ready, let's dive in. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to explain what low point is. This hula hoop represents the arc of our golf club, okay? As we make a golf swing, right, the golf club lifts up, it comes down, collects the golf ball, and goes through. Sorry for my simple explanation there, but this black tape at the bottom of the hula hoop is the lowest point in the arc, and that is our low point. So right now, as an example, my low point, right on this hula hoop, is directly in line with the golf ball. This is a low point that's in front of the golf ball, and that's a low point that's behind the golf ball. For those of you that chunk golf shots or skull golf shots, in most cases, your low point is behind the golf ball. That club is bottoming out. It's reaching the bottom of the arc while behind the golf ball. When we're talking about striking irons, your low point needs to be in front of the golf ball in 99.9% of full shots. Short game is different, and I'm sure there's a couple of outliers out there, but at 99% of your iron shots, or when the ball is on the turf with an iron, we want our low point in front of the golf ball. So that means that as we come down, that club is going to come down. We're going to make contact with the golf ball. We're going to keep going down into the ground, and then we're going to come out and then finish our swing. When we look at really good players, when we look at professionals, their ability to control where their low point is, swing after swing after swing, is incredibly consistent. And for the average player, it is incredibly inconsistent. So when I hear players say that they want to become more consistent swingers of the golf club, I think if there's one thing you need to understand is, one, what low point is, where yours may be right now, and maybe where we want it to go. So where we look at, okay, Ron, you've said that, that's fantastic. What should my low point be? A great visual for you is that a lot of really good players, their low point, that arc bottoms out roughly, let's call it 4 inches in front of the golf ball. So if we were to take 3 fingers or 4 fingers and place them in front of the golf ball, and then I put this little peg here in front, that is where their club bottoms out in the arc. So they have set up with their club behind the golf ball. This is where their arc is, and by the time they get to impact, that arc and their body, at least parts of their body, have moved 4 inches in front of the golf ball. I don't expect you to go around and measure every single shot where your low point is, because unless you have a launch monitor in front of you, that's very tricky to do. But something that I want you to consider, this might be an oversimplification, but I think it can help. Our armpit, if you look at like where your armpit and your bicep touch, that oftentimes is a pretty close representation to where that club is going to bottom out, because this club is connected to our arm. And if my armpit is back here, way behind the golf ball, I'm probably going to bottom out behind the golf ball, and vice versa. So when we look at really good players, what we see is they make that backswing, and then as they start to make that downswing, they're actually moving closer to the target, right? So right now, from my vantage point, I am more left than I was when I started, and that is allowing me to hit down on that golf ball and have a low point that is in front of the golf ball. What I see oftentimes with a lot of average players is whether it is because of their upper body or lower body, and I'm not going to dive into breaking down each of those, but once they set up, they start to get a downswing where their low point or their armpit actually starts moving away from the golf ball and that's why they end up hitting behind a lot of golf shots. We can skull golf shots, we can scoop them, all of those things. So I hope that that's a good explanation or an understanding of what low point is, where the good players are, and oftentimes where we are. So one thing we can start to do now that we have that understanding, how do we train it? I have other videos out there that are breaking down how we want to sequence our golf swing and how to move our lower body and how to move our upper body. But right now, one of the biggest takeaways I want you to have is with that understanding, I want you to be able to know how to maybe assess a divot or maybe where to look. So I'm indoors right now, so obviously I don't get to take a divot. I have a launch monitor, which is fantastic because TrackMan is going to tell me exactly what my low point is. But if I didn't have that, I would definitely use something like this little peg here that I have set up as a visual of the goal of where I'm trying to get to. So even if I didn't have a golf ball right now, I know that I'm going to set up right here, and that my goal is to have my low point or my divot in front of where that yellow peg is. You're not going to be able to know exactly where you touch with the naked eye as you're swinging at full speed, but right now I know if I was to make a golf swing, I should see the mat move around or in front of that peg. And I can't take this video and diagnose every single one of your swings, but what I can tell you is let's just start by giving yourself that objective. If we struggle making appropriate contact with our irons and we believe that we're hitting behind it or our body's behind it a lot, let's just set up a very simple task. No golf ball with one object 4 inches in front of where we're setting up. And if we have a mat, or if we're on grass, let's just move the turf or let's move the mat around that peg. Because if we moved it, if something moved in front, then I know for sure that my low point was closer than it was before. The one thing I want you to caution, and this is the number one issue I see amateurs make when they try to improve this, is they try to, now I hear these terms like, okay, well that means that I have to hold the angle in my hands, or I really have to try to get my hands forward. And I'll see players that they start to make rehearsal swings like this, thinking that if they just do this motion with this incredible amount of forward shaft lean, that that's going to be the answer. That is not. The thing I'll debunk, and the reason why we're not just going to think it's only about just jamming our hands forward, is what happens so often. I had a player do this last week. They had a lot of excess forward, like they try to get their hands super forward. Well, what's going to happen with that is usually they're going to still bottom out behind. So then what he started to do was he started to hang back to get rid of some of that excess forward shaft lean, and his armpit still ended up behind the golf ball. So if you have a video camera, and if you have a tee or a peg, the thing I want you to take away from this is that really good players have a low point that's 4 inches in front of the golf ball. I need you to find out where yours is right now. And if you set up in your garage or in your hitting bay and you start making swings and you're touching the turf here and there and there and there, and if we have all that variability, that is an inconsistency that we can start to work on making more consistent to maybe hit better golf shots. We can be in all these wonderful positions at the top and in our downswing, but if we keep bottoming out in a different spot every single time, our results are always going to be inconsistent. So the takeaway from today, the homework that I want you to do is as you go home and you make your golf swings, working on that golf swing, where are you touching the turf? And where are you bottoming out? If you have access to a TrackMan, if you spend time working on your golf game indoors and you have tech, then I want you to start taking a look at that low point number, because that value can be very telling. How close is it to being negative, meaning it's in front of the golf ball? And what is that number, and is there any predictability or consistency there? So let's find out what your low point is. Let's not fall in the trap that, okay, I'm just going to make sure that I jam my hands forward as far as we can, and this must be how I do it, because I've seen so many players get worse trying to do that. And let's start to get an understanding that a lot of it has to do with like where our armpit is relative to where that golf ball is, and the way that we move our body. We know that really good players start here, and when they get to impact, right, from my vantage point, they've moved a little bit to the left. Yes, they've increased some shaft length a little bit, but again, that's because how they've moved their body and not so much just the arms and the hands. So today's topic has been low point. For golfers who want to become more consistent, you better have a consistent low point. One thing I'll add, I'm glad I remembered it, because now people are going to say, okay, Ryan, well, what does that do with a driver? I don't have my driver here with me. I have my fairway wood. I hit this Callaway fairway wood so far. I really don't even need a driver anymore. But the big thing that changes, our body doesn't change much. It's our ball position that changes a lot. So if this is my ball position with my 7-iron, and I'll use this peg on where I want to bottom out, and if I bring another ball over here, and this is the ball position for my 3-wood, my setup can be the exact same. Actually, here I'll do this. My setup can be the same where if I set up to this golf ball, right, the ball's more in the middle of my stance for a 7-iron, and I'm going to bottom out around that peg. When the ball position moves up, because I now have a 3-wood, I'm still going to bottom out in the same place, but my ball position now has me with a 7-iron. I'm definitely hitting down on it a ton. My low point is going to be like 4 inches forward. But with a 3-wood, because the ball position has moved forward, my body can still move very similarly. That low point is going to be a lot less, but my body is still going to get into a pretty similar spot. Because as the ball position moves forward, with a driver, our low point should be behind because we're hitting up on it. And let's say this example, if I'm hitting a 3-wood, it's probably going to be pretty level. But then as we get into irons and different things like that, that low point's definitely going to be in front of the golf ball as we hit down on it. So I hope I've taken this kind of talk here about low point and help give you an understanding that consistent ball strikers have consistent low points. If you've never thought of it this way before, this could be a data point that you can look at when you're on your simulator. But then this is also something that you can check when you're practicing in your garage, even if you don't have any tech with where you're bottoming out, and start to build an understanding, am I even having consistent low point, or is it even close? Because that might be something for you to work on this winter instead of obsessing over some other positions in your golf swing. If we're not making very good contact and we have an inconsistent low point, we should be working off of what's going to give me a more consistent low point to help me at better golf shots. I hope this has helped, folks. If you have any questions, as always, please post them down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.